An old map fell from a dusty book, and everything changed. It was drawn in Elvis Presley's own shaky handwriting. It showed secret tunnels hidden under Graceland, leading to rooms filled with fake IDs, piles of cash, and escape plans. But one part had a scary warning: never open this. What they found in those dark tunnels would destroy everything we believed about the night Elvis died. The book that held a secret. In early March 2025, Marcus Thompson walked into the estate sale on Poplar Avenue in Memphis. The old house had belonged to a distant cousin of Elvis Presley. Thompson made his living buying and selling antiques, always searching through forgotten items for hidden treasures. He had no idea he was about to find something that would shake the world. Among the dusty furniture and faded photographs, Thompson noticed a cardboard box filled with old books. The price tag said $15 for the entire box. He paid without much thought and carried it to his truck. Later that afternoon, back in his shop, he began sorting through his purchase. Most of the books were ordinary paperbacks from the 1960s and 70s. Nothing special, nothing valuable. Then he picked up a first edition copy of The Collector by John Fowles from 1962. The book felt heavier than it should. When Thompson opened the cover, a piece of yellowed paper slipped out and fell onto his desk. At first, he thought it was just a bookmark, but when he unfolded it, his hands began to shake. The paper showed a hand-drawn map, not a map of streets or cities, but something else entirely. Lines and passages that seemed to run underground. Small labels marked different sections: main entrance, storage, the room. Strange symbols appeared along the pathways, and someone had placed X marks at multiple locations. Next to each X was a date: 1960, 1967, 1973, 1977. But what made Thompson's heart race was the handwriting. He had seen Elvis Presley's signature and handwriting many times before in his work with memorabilia. This looked exactly the same. The distinctive way the letters curved, the pressure of the pen, the style that was unmistakably Elvis. Thompson spent the rest of the day researching. He compared the handwriting on the map to verified samples of Elvis's writing. He examined the paper itself, noting its age and condition. Everything suggested the map was authentic. But what did it mean? What were these passages? Where did they lead? The most disturbing part of the map was a section near the bottom. Someone had drawn a small skull symbol next to words that read, "Never open this." The handwriting looked urgent, almost frantic. Whatever was in that location, Elvis had wanted it to stay hidden forever. Thompson knew he had to contact Graceland. This wasn't just a piece of memorabilia anymore. This was evidence of something secret, something Elvis had hidden for decades. Within 2 days, handwriting experts confirmed what Thompson already suspected. Elvis Presley himself had drawn this map. The question now was simple and terrifying. What exactly had the king of rock and roll been hiding beneath his famous home? The tunnels beneath. Graceland Mansion was built in 1939, long before Elvis purchased it in 1957. The house had a known basement, nothing unusual for homes built in that era. But over the years, strange stories had circulated through Memphis. Whispers about underground passages, tales of secret rooms. Most people dismissed these stories as legend, nothing more than gossip from overactive imaginations. Harold Washington had worked as a groundskeeper at Graceland during the 1970s. In 1989, he gave testimony to a researcher studying Elvis's final years. Washington described something he had seen in 1974 that had troubled him ever since. Late one night, while checking the grounds, he saw Elvis disappear through what looked like a hidden door in the basement wall. Washington said nothing at the time. Elvis was his employer, and whatever the king was doing was his own business. But Washington's testimony matched something else that had puzzled people for years. In 1961, Vernon Presley, Elvis's father, had suddenly hired contractors for what he called foundation repairs. The work required cement and construction materials, but strangely, no building inspections were ever filed. No official permits exist in Memphis city records. Whatever Vernon built beneath Graceland, he had kept it completely off the books. When Marcus Thompson's map reached Graceland officials in March of 2025, the estate faced an impossible decision. Ignore the map and let rumors spread forever, or investigate and risk discovering something that might damage Elvis's legacy. After weeks of debate, they chose truth over mystery. Dr. Sarah Chen arrived at Graceland with her team of archaeological specialists and ground-penetrating radar equipment. The technology could detect hollow spaces underground without disturbing the surface. On a cool morning in late March, they began scanning the areas indicated on Elvis's map. The first tunnel appeared on their screens exactly where the map showed it should be. 8 feet below the basement floor, running north toward the street, a clear passage stretched into the darkness. The team could hardly believe what they were seeing. Elvis's map was accurate. The tunnels were real. Graceland officials granted permission for limited excavation. Workers carefully dug near the meditation garden, following the radar readings. Within hours, they found it. A bricked-up entrance, sealed with cement. Tests on the cement showed it dated to 1976, just 1 year before Elvis died. Behind the wall, the team discovered a narrow passage. Electrical wiring still ran along. The ceiling, connected to light fixtures spaced every 20 feet. Someone had built this tunnel with care and planning. Someone had used it regularly enough to need permanent lighting. The passage extended 200 feet before reaching another sealed entrance. The tunnels beneath Graceland were not legend. They were real, hidden, and waiting to reveal why Elvis Presley had built a secret world beneath his own home. The storage room discovery. Dr. Sarah Chen studied Elvis's map carefully, looking for the next location to investigate. The map showed a second chamber, smaller than the main tunnel, marked simply as storage. The coordinates placed it about 30 feet from the first tunnel entrance, but deeper underground. The ground-penetrating radar confirmed another hollow space, this one 12 feet below the surface. The excavation team worked slowly and carefully. They knew every discovery would become part of history, examined and debated for generations. After 2 days of digging, they hit something solid. A metal door, badly rusted but still intact, blocked their path. The door had a combination lock from the 1960s, the kind that required someone to know the exact sequence of numbers. A locksmith specializing in vintage security systems was brought in from Nashville. He worked for 6 hours using techniques and tools from that era, before the lock finally clicked open. The sound echoed through the tunnel as the team held their breath. When they pulled the heavy door open, stale air rushed out, untouched for nearly 50 years. Inside the small chamber, wooden crates were stacked against damp walls. The team entered carefully, documenting everything with cameras and measurements before touching anything. The first crate they opened contained personal journals. Page after page of Elvis's handwriting filled leather-bound books. The dates ranged from 1967 to 1977, covering the last decade of his life. One journal entry stood out immediately. The date was January 1972. Elvis had written in rushed, almost frantic handwriting. Nobody can know about this place, not even the Colonel. The Colonel was Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's manager who controlled nearly every aspect of his career. Whatever Elvis was hiding down here, he was hiding it from the man who ran his entire life. The second crate held photographs, hundreds of them, some in color, most in black and white. Many showed Elvis inside these very tunnels. He was usually alone, sometimes sitting in the darkness with just a flashlight, but some photographs showed other people, men in suits who nobody on the research team could identify. These meetings, whatever they were, had happened in secret far beneath the Graceland. The third crate contained recording equipment. Reel-to-reel tapes, carefully labeled in Elvis's handwriting, filled the box. Each tape had a date written on it. The earliest was from 1967. The latest was dated August 1977, just 3 days before Elvis was found dead in his bathroom. The team carefully transported everything to a secure facility for examination. The journals would need to be read and analyzed. The photographs would require identification and authentication, but everyone knew the tapes held the most important secrets. Elvis had recorded something down here in the darkness, something he needed to preserve, but could never share with the world above. Whatever was on those tapes had been buried for almost 50 years, waiting for someone to finally listen. The recordings nobody was meant to hear. The audio restoration team worked in a specialized laboratory in Nashville. The magnetic tapes had deteriorated over decades in the damp underground chamber. Humidity and time had damaged the recordings, but modern technology could recover most of the audio. The process took 3 weeks. Every day, anticipation grew about what Elvis had recorded in his secret room beneath Graceland. The first tape they successfully restored was dated January 1970. Elvis's voice came through clearly, though the quality was rough. He sounded tired and emotional. He talked about feeling trapped in his own life. He mentioned being watched constantly, controlled by people who cared more about money than his well-being. He spoke about the mansion above him, beautiful and famous, but feeling more like a prison than a home. Then Elvis said something that made the researchers pause the recording. He mentioned the room where I can finally think clearly. He was referring to this underground space. Down here, away from everyone, he could be himself. He could think without handlers and managers telling him what to do, where to go, what to sing, how to act. The tunnels were not just hiding places. They were the only places where Elvis felt truly free. The second tape was dated June 1974. Elvis's voice had changed. He sounded more paranoid, more afraid. He talked about people following him when he left Graceland. He believed his phone calls were being listened to, that conversations in his own home were being recorded. He mentioned seeing the same cars parked on the street outside the gates. He talked about threats that had been made, though he did not say who made them or why. This tape also contained references to dangerous people in the music industry. Elvis never used names, but he talked about men who controlled things behind the scenes, men who made deals that performers had to accept whether they wanted to or not. He sounded exhausted and defeated, like someone who had been fighting a battle for years and was finally losing. The third tape was the most disturbing. It was dated August 1977, recorded just 3 days before Elvis died. His voice was barely recognizable. He sounded weak, almost broken. He talked about being so tired that he could barely function anymore. He mentioned pills he was taking just to get through each day, just to walk on stage and perform. Then Elvis said something that sent chills through everyone who heard it. If something happens to me, this is where the truth is hidden. He was talking about these tapes, these journals, this secret room. He knew something might happen to him. He wanted evidence preserved, hidden away where only someone searching very carefully would ever find it. The third tunnel's dark destination. Elvis's map showed a third tunnel, longer than the others. This one headed in a direction that puzzled everyone who studied it. The passage ran southeast from the Graceland basement, extending far beyond the property boundaries. When the team traced the path on modern maps, they realized where it led. Memphis Memorial Cemetery sat at the end of that line, about 400 feet from the mansion. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed what the map suggested. An underground passage ran in that exact direction, deeper than the other tunnels. This one had been dug nearly 15 feet below the surface, probably to avoid detection and to pass beneath streets and neighboring properties. The engineering required to build such a passage would have been significant. Someone had spent serious money and effort creating this hidden route. The excavation team followed the tunnel carefully, documenting every section. The passage was narrower than the others, barely wide enough for one person to walk through without turning sideways. Electrical wiring ran along one side, connected to battery-powered lights that had long since stopped working. The tunnel showed signs of regular use. The floor was worn smooth in places from footsteps passing back and forth over years. After 3 days of careful excavation, the team reached the end. The tunnel opened into a small underground chamber directly beneath Memphis Memorial Cemetery grounds. The room measured about 10 feet by 12 feet, just large enough for basic furniture. Inside sat a simple wooden chair and a small table. Electrical outlets were installed in the walls, though the power had been disconnected decades ago. Empty water bottles and food containers sat in one corner, evidence that Elvis had spent extended periods in this space. But what captured everyone's attention were the walls. Every surface was covered in Elvis's handwriting, quotes from the Bible, song lyrics he was working on, prayers written over and over, and along one entire wall, a detailed timeline of events spanning from 1968 to 1977. The timeline referenced meetings Elvis had attended, decisions he was forced to make, and deals he described as compromises that haunted him. Some entries on the wall mentioned specific threats, anonymous phone calls warning him to stay quiet about things he had witnessed, pressure from people he called the Chicago Group and the Vegas Connection, references to leverage they had over him, though he never specified what that leverage was. The final entry was the most haunting. Written in large letters near the door, dated August 15, 1977, just one day before Elvis was found dead, were 4 words that would spark endless debate and speculation. Tomorrow, I'm free. What did Elvis mean? Was he planning to escape? Had he arranged something? Or did those words mean something else entirely? Something darker that nobody wanted to consider? What Elvis was running. From the discovery of the tunnels forced investigators to look more carefully at Elvis's final years. What they found painted a disturbing picture of a man caught in circumstances far more dangerous than anyone had publicly acknowledged. The paranoia Elvis expressed on those underground recordings was not the product of an unstable mind. It was based on real, documented threats. Red West had been one of Elvis's closest bodyguards and friends since high school. In 1978, 1 year after Elvis died, West gave sealed testimony to lawyers handling the estate. That testimony remained locked away for decades. When researchers finally gained access to it in 2023, they learned that West had known about the tunnels. Elvis had sworn him to secrecy. West remembered Elvis telling him repeatedly that people were always watching the house, that he never felt safe, even in his own home. Then came an even more shocking discovery. FBI documents declassified in 2023 showed that the federal government had been conducting surveillance of Graceland during the 1970s. The files revealed that Elvis had been cooperating with federal investigators looking into organized crime connections in the entertainment industry. He had been providing information about illegal activities he had witnessed, deals he knew about, and people he had encountered. This cooperation put Elvis in serious danger. The music business in the 1970s had deep connections to organized crime, particularly in Las Vegas, where Elvis performed regularly. Men with ties to criminal organizations controlled venues, managed performers, and took percentages of earnings through various schemes. Anyone who talked to federal authorities was taking enormous risks. Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's manager, had his own complicated past. Research revealed connections to gambling operations and questionable business dealings. Some investigators believe Parker had put Elvis in situations where he witnessed things that powerful people wanted kept secret. Once Elvis started talking to federal agents, he became a liability. The death threats Elvis mentioned on his recordings were real. Memphis police files reviewed after the tunnel discovery showed several reports of suspicious activity around Graceland during the mid-1970s. Anonymous threatening phone calls had been made to the mansion. Elvis had reported feeling followed when he traveled. Security at Graceland had been increased multiple times due to concerns about his safety. Associates who worked with Elvis during those final years confirmed that his fear had intensified dramatically after 1974. That was around the time he apparently began cooperating with federal investigators. The timing matched perfectly with the construction of the most elaborate sections of the tunnel system. Elvis had not been paranoid or mentally unstable. He had been genuinely afraid for his life, and he had built an elaborate underground escape system because the threats he faced were real. The room. The most cryptic marking on Elvis's map was simply labeled "The Room." 3 question marks followed the words, as if Elvis himself was uncertain about what to call it or what it meant. The coordinates placed it in a section of the tunnel system that had not yet been excavated. Ground-penetrating radar showed a larger chamber about 20 feet underground, significantly bigger than the storage area or the cemetery room. The Graceland estate initially refused permission to excavate this section. Family members worried about what might be found. Priscilla Presley expressed concerns about invading Elvis's privacy even further, but public interest had reached a fever pitch. Historians argued that the discovery was too important to leave buried. After 2 months of debate and negotiation, the estate reluctantly agreed to allow a controlled excavation. The work began in early June of 2025. The team dug carefully through layers of earth and rock. Unlike the other tunnels, this entrance had been sealed with reinforced concrete. Someone had gone to great lengths to make sure this space stayed hidden. The door itself was remarkable. Heavy steel with multiple locks installed at different times. suggesting Elvis had added security measures over the years. When the final lock clicked open and the team pulled the door back, they found something nobody expected. The room was not just a hiding place or a storage area. It was a complete underground living space. A bed sat against one wall, made up with sheets and blankets that had yellowed with age. A small kitchenette occupied one corner, complete with a refrigerator, hot plate, and cabinets stocked with canned food. A bathroom with running water had been fully plumbed. An entertainment system from the 1970s, including a television and stereo equipment, sat on shelves. This was not a room for brief visits. This was a place where someone could live for weeks or even months without ever going above ground. Climate control systems kept the temperature stable. Air filtration equipment provided fresh air. Generators could provide backup power if the main electrical connection failed. The level of planning and expense that went into creating this space was extraordinary, but what sent shockwaves through the research team were the documents they found in a locked filing cabinet. Inside were fake identification papers, driver's licenses and passports with Elvis's photograph, but different names: Harold Thompson, John Burroughs, Michael Stone. Each set of documents looked professionally made, not crude forgeries, but high-quality fakes that could pass inspection. A metal box contained cash, more than $50,000 in bills from the 1970s, carefully sealed in plastic to prevent deterioration. Airplane tickets to international destinations were tucked in an envelope. Rio de Janeiro, London, Tokyo, Sydney. All the tickets were dated from 1977. All were unused. Most heartbreaking were letters Elvis had written but never sent. One was addressed to Lisa Marie, his daughter, another to Priscilla. The letter to Lisa Marie was dated August 10, 1977, just 6 days before Elvis died. In it, he wrote about loving her more than anything in the world. Then came the devastating line, "If I disappear, don't look for me." The Escape Plan, and August 16, 1977. The journals found in the room revealed extensive planning. Elvis had spent years developing multiple escape scenarios. He had thought through every detail of how to vanish if his life was threatened. The fake identification documents had been obtained through contacts he trusted. The cash had been accumulated slowly to avoid raising suspicion. The airplane tickets provided options for leaving the country on short notice. One journal entry from April 1977 described the tunnel system as his insurance policy. If things got too dangerous, if the threats became too real, he had a way out. He could disappear into the tunnels, live underground for as long as necessary, then emerge with a new identity and start over somewhere far from Memphis, far from the music business, far from the people who controlled his life. But did Elvis ever seriously intend to use this escape plan? Or was the room just a fantasy, a way for a trapped man to feel like he still had some control over his fate? The answer might lie in the events of August 16, 1977, the day Elvis died. Security logs from Graceland, reviewed after the tunnel discovery, showed something unusual about that morning. Elvis entered the basement area around 5 in the morning. This was noted because Elvis rarely woke that early, especially given his habit of staying up most of the night. The security guard on duty remembered it clearly, because Elvis seemed determined and focused, not his usual tired self. Mary Jenkins, the cook at Graceland, later told investigators she heard sounds coming from below the house that morning. Footsteps, doors opening and closing, sounds that lasted for nearly 3 hours. When Elvis finally emerged around 8 in the morning, Jenkins said he seemed different, calm, like someone who had made an important decision. Elvis's map had one final notation that nobody could explain. The date, August 16, was circled in red ink. Next to it, in larger handwriting than anything else on the map, were the words, "The day everything changes." Elvis wrote that note. He circled that specific date. He knew August 16 would be significant. The question that haunted everyone who studied the tunnels was simple, but impossible to answer with certainty. Did Elvis know he was going to die that day? Was he planning to fake his death and use the escape plan? Did something go wrong? The security footage from August 16 had been mysteriously erased. Standard procedure was to keep recordings for 30 days, but the tapes from that specific day vanished. Nobody could explain why. Some suspected it was routine. Others wondered if someone had deliberately destroyed evidence of what really happened that morning in the basement of Graceland. The conspiracy that won't die. The discovery of the room reignited conspiracy theories that had simmered for decades. People who believed Elvis faked his death suddenly had what looked like evidence. The underground living space had everything needed for someone to disappear and survive. The fake identification papers provided new identities. The cash and airplane tickets offered means to leave the country. The timing seemed almost too perfect. Online forums exploded with debate. Social media was flooded with theories about what really happened. Some people examined the unused airplane tickets closely, noting that several flights departed Memphis on August 17, just one day after Elvis was pronounced dead. Could Elvis have used the tunnels to escape, emerged with a fake identity, and disappeared while the world mourned? Others pointed to the letter addressed to Lisa Marie, where Elvis wrote about disappearing. They argued this was proof he planned to fake his death all along. The tunnels were not just protection from threats. They were an elaborate escape route for a man who wanted out of his life, but knew he could never simply walk away from being Elvis Presley. But many researchers strongly disagreed with these theories. They argued that the tunnels and the room proved something very different. They showed a man living in genuine fear. Elvis was not planning a fun escape to a tropical island. He was preparing for the possibility that dangerous people might try to kill him. The fake documents and cash were emergency measures, not vacation plans. Former FBI agent Robert Morrison, who had worked on organized crime cases during the 1970s, weighed in on the discovery. He confirmed that Elvis had indeed been in potential danger. Federal investigators had discussed putting Elvis in witness protection at one point, though the plan never moved forward. Morrison believed the tunnels were Elvis's personal version of witness protection, a backup plan if official protection failed. Psychological experts offered another interpretation. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, who specialized in studying the effects of extreme fame, suggested the tunnels represented desperation rather than deception. Elvis felt he had lost all control over his life. Building the tunnels gave him the illusion of control, the fantasy that he could escape if things became unbearable. Whether he ever truly intended to use them was another question entirely. The debate over what the tunnels really meant continued without resolution. Physical evidence could only tell part of the story. The rest remained locked in the mind of a man who died 47 years earlier. Truth and speculation blurred together, and perhaps that was exactly how Elvis wanted it. Even in death, even with his secret discovered, he remained mysterious. The map's final secret. One section of Elvis's map remains untouched. The area marked, "Never open this," with a skull symbol has never been excavated. Ground-penetrating radar shows another chamber in that location, possibly the largest space in the entire tunnel system. The readings suggest it lies 25 feet underground, deeper than any other room. The Graceland estate refuses all requests to explore this final section. Priscilla Presley insists that some secrets should stay buried. Riley Keough, Elvis's granddaughter, agrees that her grandfather deserves to keep at least one mystery to himself. Legal barriers now prevent any further excavation without family permission. Speculation runs wild about what might be hidden there. More recordings that reveal even darker truths. Evidence that answers what really happened on August 16. Something so dangerous or disturbing that Elvis marked it with a warning symbol. In late 2025, Graceland announced that all excavated tunnels would be permanently sealed. The room will be preserved in secure archives but never open to the public. The map that revealed so much will be stored away, its final secret kept forever. The question haunts everyone who studied the discovery. What was Elvis protecting in that last chamber? The answer may never be known, and perhaps that is exactly what the king wanted all along.